Hello, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to yet another episode of the Strong Human Talk Show presented by the one and only Global Lifestyle Club, the Strong Human Network. In our talk show, we aspire to bring people from various backgrounds for you, our strong human viewers, to understand their life journey and how they excelled in their personal and professional lives. Our talk show will not only inspire you, but will also help you to understand the skill sets that you need to succeed in your personal and professional lives. My name is Madhumita. I'm your host for today. I'm a success manager at the Strong Human Network, and joining me today as a co-host is Niharika. And joining us today together for our episode is a very special guest, a strong human with over 27 years of experience in brand communication with one of the world's most successful ad agencies, an executive coach, a trainer, a speaker, a branding and communication consultant, a storyteller, basically an all-rounder, Mr. Rajesh Gangwani. Welcome to the show, Mr. Gangwani. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you, Madhumita, for this invitation. And thank you, Niharika.
We are absolutely honored to have you on our show today, and I'm sure our viewers are going to be enlightened with a lot of facts and information. And most importantly, they'll be inspired by your expertise, your knowledge, and your immense experience. Um, and now I'd like to tell our viewers if they have any questions and suggestions, please enter them in the comment box below, and we will be reading them out at the end of the episode. And Mr. Gangwani will be answering them for you. Mr. Gangwani, let me start off the show today by asking you, what does being a strong human being to you?
Okay. That's an interesting start. Yeah, when you say strong human, what comes to my mind is the realization or the awareness of what's the difference between human being and being human. You know, while it's the two words, it's the same two words, but you just interchange them, and you say human being and you say being human, it makes a world of difference. So, to me, a strong human is one who embraces humanity, the human side of our living. And I see it as actually two different strands. One is this whole aspect about accepting yourself the way you are, and then believing in yourself, and then believing yourself that you can be a better version of yourself. So they may seem at one end to be a little contradictory, but actually it is really coming together of two polarities about, on one hand, accepting the way you are, yourself the way you are, and on the other hand, believing in yourself that you can be your best version. So to me, that really sums up what a strong human is.
Wow, that is by far the most uh, pure and easy to understand yet perfect definition that I've heard about
Thank
a
you.
strong human. Uh, so, Mr. Gangwani, now just for our viewers to know you a little bit, you've been heading the Mumbai operations for the world's most successful advertising mogul, J. Walter Thompson, which we know as Wonderman Thompson now.
That's
And
right.
from there to being an executive coach and trainer, what has the journey been like?
Oh, actually, it's been a wonderful journey. A journey which absolutely no regrets whatsoever. And actually, I see it almost. There's a little bridge between the two parts, so to say. The first almost 28 years of being in advertising and brand building at J. Walter Thompson, now Wonderman Thompson. Actually, it was Hindustan Thompson when I joined as a management trainee in the early 90s.
90s.
From being Hindustan Thompson to HTA to JWT to J. Walter Thompson, and finally, of course, to Wonderman Thompson. So it's gone through. My journey has also been the company's journey in many ways of different phases in life. But I see it actually, the bridge that I spoke about is the way I see it is, it's from building brands to building people potential, right? So it's almost you're doing two things where I was focused on for the first part on building brands, but here it's about people as brands and people and their potential in the area of coaching and training. And it's been a smooth transition for me. And perhaps like Steve Jobs mentioned that you look back and you join the dots in hindsight. For me, when I look back and I realized that I was always interested in the people side of business in my job, in my career. And somewhere that interest, that desire to spend more time with people, understanding people, connecting with people, has carried on into my new phase, my second innings, as I call it, as a coach and a facilitator and communication consultant.
Oh, that's really remarkable. But in this entire journey, it's almost 3 decades that you were at GWT, and then now an executive coach for quite some time. Is there any moment in life that you recall which reminded you or which inspired you as to be a strong human, or that brought forth the strong human in you?
I wouldn't say there was a single moment, but there have been strong moments throughout life. There have been so many challenges, opportunities that came by, and some things that tested my strength as well. So I wouldn't call it a single point in terms of realizing what being the true strong human was. But I remember a workshop that I attended after I had quit my job and I started the second innings. And this workshop was something that was a game changer for me. And in many ways, it brought this entire aspect of self-awareness right up front for me. And that to me was something that I realized was, look, I haven't been exposed to this aspect of my life in all these years. Of course, you deal with people, but really turning the lens inwards and looking at yourself so minutely and the impact that you have in the ecosystem around you and the ecosystem has the impact on you was an eye-opener for me. So that, if I was to say, that was that moment I realized that, yeah, this was a totally different world and very different from where I had actually moved from. So that was the really interesting part, if you had to pin me down to that one moment.
And a lot of times, like you said, there are, so many moments, but then, like you mentioned, this must be like that one moment for you. And I think for a lot of people, they don't, realize that it's that particular moment. Like we say, seize the opportunity. So
yeah.
The only point is any moment of your life can actually, bring forth the strong human, and you might not even know that it's coming, and it's up to you to seize that moment and live the strong human life, right?
That's right. In fact, I the last 2 years have been very challenging for humankind, if you were to say it that way, right? All across the world. And for me, this was the time when actually I was transitioning from my corporate job to my new job as a coach and trainer. And one of the really important things that we actually did as part of that was my association with Association of Mumbai Coaches. I'm part of that unit called AMC, which has about 100 odd coaches. And we decided at that point of time that how do we actually contribute back? How do we give back at this point of time, really? And there were people struggling. There were all kinds of challenges that people were facing. And we said, this is the time that coaching has to come up to the fore and lend a helping hand pro bono. So I was one of the, I think there was 25, 30 coaches that actually volunteered to come on board. And it was amazing for me to really work with people there and spend time understanding what they were going through. People were stuck. There were job losses that were happening. There were mental health issues that people were going through. And for us to step up and help people at that point of time was actually another of those moments that really made me feel the role of empathy. And very often when we talk about strong human, we talk about EI and we talk about empathy. And that's one moment I realized that we could contribute a lot in showing that empathy to what people were going through.
True, and like you mentioned, the last 2 years have been really challenging in terms of education, in terms of professionalism. So you've been in the training and coaching industry for quite some time now. So having said about the last 2 years, how important is coaching in today's day and age? And also, I would like to ask what really would differentiate coaching from mentoring, because being a trainer myself, I've come across so many people, who confuse coaching and mentoring. They think it's the same thing. So how would you answer that? I mean, how would you describe or differentiate between coaching and mentoring?
So that's like two questions in one.
Yeah.
So I think coaching has always been relevant, right? Maybe we were not referring it to as coaching, but leaders were always engaged in some form of mentoring, coaching. There are people, but coaching, as it's understood, is really, really a critical part of self-awareness. In fact, the whole aspect of coaching is about self-awareness and making you realize what you are capable of, right? And that's what you do in coaching when you're working with your clients. You start by saying the leading assumption or the leading thought process that we start with is that you have all the resources. The client or the coachee has got all the resources that are required for them to reach their ultimate potential. Maybe there are reasons why they are blocked, or maybe there are reasons why they're facing some hurdles in achieving their goals. And as a coach, you're enabling that level of self-awareness. You're creating that safe environment for the client to start exposing their vulnerabilities, if I may call it, or being absolutely open and transparent. And in that journey is when the realization starts happening about where the blockages are and how we can actually work together in partnership to help move forward, right? So I think it's an extremely important part of, particularly today, if not more important than earlier, because we are going through such an amount of disruption, not just because of pandemic, just because of the whole technology disruption or at the pace at which things are changing. Suddenly you're finding that where is my anchor point? And it's just shifted, and every time something shifts, right? So how do you deal with this kind of constant uncertainty? And that's going to be a way of life for us. And that's where coaching sort of starts becoming a space where you can start exploring who you really are and where do you really want to go, right? So did I answer your question?
Yes, absolutely.
And your other question was about difference between coaching and mentoring. And I know I completely agree with you. There's so much of confusion out there. And if you include sports coaching, then you say, there is also, if you look at the cricket team, there's a fielding coach, there's a bowling coach, there's a batting coach, there's a head coach. There's so many coaches. And now, of course, you have even Dhoni being appointed.
Exactly. I was coming to the same point. Now he has joined as mentor for Indian cricket.
He's come as a mentor.
Yeah.
So what's going on? How many people, is it too many cooks? But there is a difference. There's an essential, there's subtle and a fine difference between coaching and mentoring. While both are common in many ways, because you're really saying that how do we nurture potential? How do we make sure that people achieve their goals, achieve their desires? And how can we, as mentors and coaches, support them as well as challenge them? Sometimes even challenging is required. It's not just nurturing support. It's almost sometimes the gentle nudge to people to really push their frontiers and their boundaries to go where they're capable of reaching. So I think both are, the intent really is the same. Now, therefore, what's the difference? Actually, it's a continuum, and we call it the ask-tell continuum. So coaching comes from the ask aspect of it, whereas mentoring comes from the tell aspect of the continuum. So in mentoring, you're actually moving a step forward to offer advice. So where typically, if in a relationship between a mentor and a mentee, there is probably a gap of experience. So there's the mentor is typically someone who's more senior, more experienced, and he or she is passing on knowledge and experience and advice to the mentee, right? So there's a little bit of let me show you the way kind of approach to the learning. Whereas when you're talking of coaching, it's coming from that ask domain where you're saying, let me use the process of inquiry, right? Or the power of questions to help the client, the coachee, to start exploring themselves, right? Or go a little deeper within themselves to search the answers which already exist. So like I said, the starting point is what the answers are. But there are reasons why the mind is clouded, things are not very clear. You're saying, okay, I'm not so sure where to go. And maybe there are some perceptions that you have, some biases that you are facing. And that's why coaching comes and starts, lends a supporting or a guiding hand to clear some of these so that the path becomes clearer for yourself. So essentially, that's the difference between coaching and mentoring. Having said that, I'm aware that in many places, when people say a coach, they expect you to also support you and give you advice. And they say, but that's the meaning of coach. So as practitioners, I think it is our job to also clear some of these misconceptions. So even when I do coaching or sometimes with students, we were doing some kind of work with mentoring students. So they came and said, college students, and they said, but we have a mentor in our college. So this is not a mentoring job. We are going to come as a coach. So they said, sir, but what is the difference? So you have to explain the difference before you start any engagement of this is where you draw the boundaries. And if required, and sometimes you are in a situation where people say, but give me a little bit let's do a little bit of brainstorm. And you say, okay, fine. Now that the coaching session is over, you take the coach hat off and you wear the mentoring hat and say, okay, now let's see whether we can work together for some time and see a way out. But yeah, typically that would be the difference between coaching and mentoring.
Right. That has answered so many of my questions, whatever you said. And I think when you mentioned about that, when people come and ask you about, oh no, we already have a mentor, and what's the whole point? I think that it's so important to communicate. Believe it or not, even right now, if you go on to Google and type explain difference between coaching and mentoring, it will not clarify the question. The answers that Google will give you does not really clarify the question, but whatever you mentioned clarifies it so well. That actually brings me to the next question, which is about communication, because you are a communication expert. So
can I interrupt you?
Absolutely.
Just on that point, sorry to, because what you just said is so true, because it's not just, that is still in the corporate zone that I'm talking about. But if you go outside, there are nutrition coaches, there are fitness coaches, and the terminology coach is being used very liberally. And typically your nutrition coach will exactly give you advice about what you should eat, how you should exercise. So there's a whole lot of advice going on even as a coach. So yes, it is the ecosystem and we have to live with it. But especially in the corporate world, I think things are becoming clearer today about, yes, the domain of coaching is different from the domain of mentoring. And both have a strong place. Sorry, you were talking about communication.
That whatever you just said actually reminded me of just last night. We're so involved in social media of late. Last night I received a message from a particular person. To be very honest, I do not even know who that person is, because nowadays you have that option on social media that if the person is not your friend or doesn't follow you, they won't give you the name. So this XYZ person tells me I am a diet mentor. So I'm like, that's a new term. I've never heard of a diet mentor before. I've heard of a diet coach or a physical coach or something. What's a diet mentor? So I go on to this person's profile and there's very limited information. And it's nothing but recipes.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay, that's interesting. So yeah, I think that actually brings me to the next question, where like I'd like to ask you, what is the most important aspect of communication, especially in the current scenario where, having considering our previous discussion, verbal and non-verbal communication is the key for successful interaction, and now more than ever, because communication is the only way you're going to be able to get to another person. So what would be the most important aspect of communication now?
Yeah, I always, my favorite quotation on communication is, the art of communication is the language of leadership. So when you speak of leadership, communication is not very far behind. I think they are inextricably linked with each other. Yes, I think, just if you keep aside what we are going through right now, which is very, very unusual, we are all doing this right now virtually, and very often body language, and it's difficult. I mean, when you say non-verbal, we all know that most of our communication is non-verbal, right? There's only probably 20 to 30% is verbal, but the remaining 70-80% is non-verbal. In fact, I just remembered a funny incident. There was someone I know who was interviewing a candidate, and the person, the lady on the other side, refused to put on a camera for an interview. She was coming for an interview, and so the person who was taking the interview said that, look, if this is an interview, I'd like to see you. And she said, I was not told that it was going to be a video interview.
Oh, wow.
Which therefore means that people, you have to qualify today, even if an interview is going to be an audio interview or a video interview. And so life changed dramatically, because when you thought it was an interview, you would be dressed in your best. You would really make sure that your presence was being captured very well in front of the interviewer. But to actually have the confidence to say, I did not know that this was a video interview, and she did not put on a camera. And very reluctantly at the end, this person said, look, for me to move ahead and to the next round, I want to see. I want to see who you are. So I think she reluctantly put on a video. But yeah, obviously, I don't know whether the second round happened or not after that. But I think the point you're making is this whole executive presence piece also. How you look, how you show up, how you speak, what's your body language, your verbal, non-verbal. A lot of it today has changed dramatically virtually. But if you go back and say, look at it in the offline mode, and hopefully things will go back, and you're already seeing movements that things are opening up and we're going back to so-called normal. I feel that there are a couple of points that are continue to be absolutely timeless in terms of communication. I want to talk about the one which is not so spoken about. It's not the marketable part, is actually being great flair, have great flair as a communicator, being a fantastic public speaker, having the gift of the gab. All of us, when we talk about communication, we say, hey, this guy, I want to be like that motivational speaker who can stand on the stage and dazzle people. But to me, and when I coach leaders, emerging leaders and leaders, I always start any discussion on communication with listening. And I always start by saying the most important part of communication is being a good listener. Because only if you're a good listener can you be a good speaker. Because listening starts with understanding, listening starts with building empathy, listening starts with building rapport. If you are not going to do that, how are you ever going to actually be a great communicator who can connect with the audiences and connect with them at an emotional level? So I deliberately spend at least an hour on listening skills. How do we really cultivate our listening skills? So that to me is an important part. Of course, public speaking, making sure you create the right impact, all that I'm not underestimating at all. That is critical. The other aspect of communication, which I feel also is part of this whole strong human ethos that we speak about, is assertiveness, right? The courage of being assertive in your communication. It's so important today to stand up and do things which you believe in. It's also linked to authenticity. very often, I think there is always people who are the most. I've seen some of the leaders who are extremely competent, extremely skilled, but when it comes to a position of saying no, they tend to sort of take a slightly soft stand, or they're willing to say yes to a lot of things when they don't want to say no. So being assertive in your communication, drawing healthy boundaries between what you want to say and and where you want to agree, where you want to disagree, or creating that space of mutual respect, that it's not about being aggressive or being passive, or being passive aggressive also. It's really standing your ground and creating the space of respect, that let's agree to disagree almost, right, in some cases. So I feel that these two aspects to me are critical today. Listening has always been, but to me assertive skills are very, very important to cultivate.
I read your articles about, when you speak about the art of listening, and it just keeps reminding me of this thing that we keep saying. I don't know if I know you heard what I said, but I don't know if you understood what I meant. So I totally agree with the listening aspect of communication. Now, having spoken about your articles, it reminds me of another one of your articles, which where you mentioned about how one of your clients says that he wants to feel the aha moment to as a successful outcome of your conversation. So after having had such a colorful career graph and
colorful. I like the word colorful.
So what would you describe as your aha moment in life? I mean, I know there must be a lot of them, but I'm sure there must be one that just clicks all the time.
That's a curved ball that you've thrown. Yeah, life is a series of aha moments, isn't it? I don't think there's anyone, even if you ask Sainath, I'm sure that I think he'll say my child, when my child was born, was the biggest aha moment for him. And I remember my first child especially. And when I say that in front of my second child, he gets very angry, because I always said aha moment was when the first child was. Yeah, but on a more serious note, I think I have to go really back just to pull out, because that really changed my life in many ways. I started life, believe it or not, as a chemical engineer. So I did my chemical engineering, and I was working with petroleum company, Bharat Petroleum, for a year and a half. And I remember somewhere after completing my 1-year apprenticeship, and one night, we used to do night shifts, and I was walking sort of aimlessly at like 9 o'clock in the night somewhere. And I just went and sat somewhere, and I said, what am I doing with my life? This is not what I wanted to do in my life. Where am I? I've done this. In those days, when you were a decent performer, you either got into engineering, you got into medicine, right? There was not a third option. If you were really bright, you would get into civil services. Or those were the days when UPSC was like, it still continues to be for most people. But those were the three options. Others were like, you're not a non-performer if you've not managed to get in either of these three. So I really sat and said, look, I love to talk about brands. I love advertising. I don't know what am I doing here. And I thought I had a creative instinct in me, and none of that was getting leveraged here. And I said that, look, I have to move on. And I decided, and that was the aha moment, that night that I was walking aimlessly. And that for a moment, it struck me that I'm completely in the wrong space and I need to take a call. And I resigned from my job. And you can imagine my dad, he was in the railways, government job and government company. My dad saw me retiring from Bharat Petroleum after 40 years. He said, you've got your job, you're set for life. And to go and tell him in a year and a half saying that, look, I've decided to quit my job, and then did my MMS and in marketing and move on to advertising. I think that moment was an aha moment, because it really changed the whole trajectory of my life. And of course, there have been subsequent series of aha moments, but I still remember that very, very vividly. So since you brought it up, that was what came to mind.
True. And I think that directly reflects on how self-aware you are as an individual, and as we all speak about it, self-awareness is such an important part of being a strong human. So I think that's an excellent aha
I think
moment.
one more point I want to add is that he had the courage, to say that this is what he wants to do. I mean, that too, advertising and all, not everyone will get convinced with that, right?
There were very few, yes, Sai, there was very few engineers that time in advertising.
Exactly.
Very few.
Yeah, so I mean, that requires a lot of courage. He had self-awareness and also had the courage to choose a path. And that too, we are not talking about 2020. It's about 1980s, sir?
87, I think. 87.
I was not even born.
Yeah. I'm sorry for reminding me of my age.
But that requires a lot of courage, seriously. And I'm like, still, how did you do it? Like, I mean, I want to see what your reaction was, because I was also like working at State Bank at the age of 21. And then I could convince my parents because I got admission into IIM Calcutta. But how did you convince that? I'm still very curious to know.
You always need people who support you during those times when you have to take those kind of decisions. And my elder brother was a strong support for me in that decision. My dad, of course, was a little disappointed because for me, like I said, he was imagining that I would retire from the job. And let me tell you, the story became even more interesting. I left my job in Bharat Petroleum. And while I was thinking of, applying for my courses and giving my interviews at various institutes, I managed to get another job. And the other job that I got was in my hometown, believe it or not, in the coincidences. So it was in the purchase department of a chemical company. So I moved back to Nagpur, which is my hometown. And my dad now had an extreme. Now he's come home. How can he leave home now? So first I go out of home to Mumbai. And then I leave a government job. Then I come home and then he says, yeah, he saw me going, on my two-wheeler, carrying my dabba and saying, wow, nice job, cushy job at home. How can he leave his job another time? So I mean, he was quite shattered, saying that this is the second time he's doing it now. And then my brother said that, look, elder brother said that, look, I think there is a dream that he has. He wants to do something in life. He's obviously not going to be happy being in this. And I think he did the convincing job. And I suspect they saw somewhere that my heart was not there and I wanted to study more. And since you mentioned Sainath, it's a very interesting story. My dad always talks about his unrealized dream of studying. Remember, we came as migrants from Pakistan. I mean, we were undivided India. So we migrated. We are like Sindhis and we came all the way. And my dad always wanted to study in life. But he had to support a large family, so he gave up his education. So somewhere I think he resonated with my thought of wanting to study more. And he said, okay, I get it. I mean, it's not about the job. It's about, wanting to study more. And then he supported me. My brother supported me. And thanks to that, life changed.
Okay. So that describes why you are a strong human, to be honest. And as I think there's a lot of inspiration that I will take back, our viewers will take back from this, because there are so many times, where people don't really, even though they might be self-aware and they might just come to a realization that they're not where they're supposed to be, but they don't have the courage to get up and talk about it. They'll be like, chalta hai, I'll manage or live in it. And I think how you've carved it out is very, very inspirational. And I think you help with, you are a transformation coach, and you help people enhance their skills, and you help people become leaders, you help future leaders, and you transform people into leaders. So amongst all other skills, leadership skills is important, like you mentioned. Who, according to you, is a good leader, or what skills does a good leader possess?
This is a topic that you can discuss the whole day.
True.
Let's see how we can address that. I think for me, leadership is about influence, right? I mean, has always been about influence. And how do you create influence? Because then you have people willing to follow you, and people who look up to you and get inspired by you. But to me, a way of saying that is the way you inspire people as leaders is not by telling them how amazing you are, right? You tell them how amazing they are. And that's when they start looking up to you and following you. And there was another sort of, I think vaguely I remember a quote, I don't know the exact words, but somewhere it was all about saying, how do you elevate people? You know, it's literally, leadership is not about, getting more followers, because we are living in this whole world of influence today. Social media, it's all the metrics that count, right? Number of people who like, the number of people who comment, number of people who follow you, and everybody's into this whole game of building cults and communities, and suddenly now leadership is seen in a very different lens. That you are a leader because you have so many people who are following you on Instagram, and you have this great community that you built. All that is fine, right? And that's also a very important measure of the impact that you have on people. But truly, at the heart of leadership is not just how many lives you're impacting and following, which is one. In the purest sense, how are you actually making them elevated? How are you improving their lives? How are you creating more leaders? And to me, that's the core and essence of leadership, particularly today, right? Rather than just think in terms of me being the center of the universe as a leader and creating this whole aura and halo around me and lots of followers. Are the followers who are around me, are they really being lifted up? And that spirit of, as people say, give and take. Are you giving more than you're taking? Are you truly giving more and improving communities, improving society? And that to me is a key and important aspect of leadership today. I think leaders also today have to have a huge amount of emotional intelligence. That whole piece of empathy is become crucial today, and I think increasingly a lot of talent is going to decide which companies to join or not by the culture of the companies. We have always known that culture is important, but today, is this company really caring about work-life balance? Is this company, we've heard of Nike, for instance, if you saw recently, they spoke about how they closed their office for a few days to say that let those be days where people can truly rest and look after their mental wellness. So increasingly, companies who are tangibly going to make efforts, or even in India, there was, I think, delivery companies, I think, was it Swiggy or was it Zomato? Some of these companies also came forward to say that we want to improve, people who are our front end and who are doing the logistics work, and they lead some tough lives. So really, I mean, it's always been about the purpose, and and everybody talks about the purpose, but really, at a very tangible level, how are you actually being more empathetic as a leader? Right? And how are you truly going out and reaching out and understanding people beyond their roles? Because very often this whole thing of title, designation, roles, you have, as a leader today, you have to think beyond all those, because those are becoming, in many ways, as leadership itself is becoming more distributed. It's not there's one person at the top and this whole command and control kind of style of leadership. There are many leaders working together collaboratively. In that aspect, or in that kind of ecosystem, are you truly connected to your employees one-on-one? Are you not? Are you just treating them as people who just do the job for you? Or are you really interested to know what is happening in their lives? And can you really connect at that level? So I think those two things would be, to me, critical aspects of leadership today. Besides the other things, I mean, there's so many ways in which leadership works. But to me, these two parts, how are you concerned about elevating people? And the other one is, how are you truly empathetic as a leader, connecting with people?
true. And I think even when you spoke about, the number of what we call today's influencers, or, there's this generation calls it FOMO, fear of missing out, because
Yeah.
they see people, and then that again, impacts their mental health. Having seen people that they think they only look at the uh, front picture, the what we call the tip of the iceberg in the training world, and they don't look at what goes behind the
Yeah.
scenes actually, which is why now a lot of people talk about mental health, and how uh, even leaders talk about mental health now. So also empathy and emotional intelligence are another very big aspect of um, a strong human. And as a strong human yourself, if you could, we've spoken about self-awareness, now we've spoken about emotional intelligence, courage and confidence. So if I could ask you that, if you could state one important skill that every strong human must possess, what would that one skill be?
I think in the past 2 years, um, things have fundamentally changed us as people, right? In so many ways. And one thing it's also taught us is the aspect of resilience. And we spoke about courage, and Sai spoke about courage. And I think somewhere it's also got in touch with us that we have reservoirs of resilience that we were not even aware of, right? And as human beings, we know now that resilient spirit can help us tackle all kinds of uncertainties which are now going to become commonplace today. So today, for instance, when you say third wave, uh, the kind of panic that we had a few months back when it was the second wave, that kind of panic is not there. Of course, people are conscious and people are still particular, but I think somewhere we have now dug within us to say, yeah, we can do it. We can find a way, and this whole spirit of being responsible. I would say also that is an extremely an important aspect of whether you call it strong human or whether we call it that sense of leadership, is this whole aspect of ownership, right? We are now responsible about the fact that we have to take care of ourselves, and not just ourselves, about people around us. And now we cannot keep blaming the whole world for it. It's easy to say that we are the victims and somebody did this and the government was responsible, or the municipal body was responsible. Somewhere this aspect about let's own our own lives, and take full responsibility without blame game happening. And that, I think, that spirit of resilience and that spirit of ownership, and to me, leadership is ownership. So I think probably that has taught us to become stronger leaders by embracing resilience and by embracing ownership.
So, you spoke about how people should take the onus about taking care of those around us and taking care of uh, oneself. Uh, it actually brings me to my next question, anyways. Uh, Having seen the current style of working, which we've been talking about since, I don't know, 2 years now, which we call the work from home era, uh, and we see people struggling to, achieve that perfect balance between professional and personal lives, and uh, seeing the time frames literally going out of the window. uh, both these aspects are somehow getting merged, and not always in a good way. So how do you maintain a work-life balance?
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think the worlds have almost merged with each other, right? And the other day I was actually reading some stuff, and I came across this whole IBM manifesto. Have you read about this? This the whole IPO had actually at that point of time. It was I don't know if it was early this year or it was last year, 2020. there was literally a pledge and a manifesto that the IBM CEO put up. And in that, it went down to granular details about how these were the ways that he would work as a leader, and this is at the CEO level, about respecting those boundaries. And it went down to the extent of the calls which would not exceed more than 20 minutes, virtual calls, and you would respect the fact that their work is actually now including into family life. And it's a beautiful manifesto, and if you can look that up, actually there was some 8 or 10 points about how the new work-life balance. It was not about so much as work-life balance, but it was a new way of working with people.
Yes, I think this went viral on Facebook and LinkedIn somewhere around 3-4 months ago.
3-4 months ago, and it's fascinating to see that, and it's so beautifully written. So you are right. This whole work-life balance thing is something that all of us in our every individual capacity we grapple with. One way of looking at that aspect is what is happening at that point of time. So it's not work-life balance as a philosophy, so to say, but you literally do that balancing act every single moment. So if you're a mother, you realize at that point of time that, look, my needs for my child at that point of time are far more important than my needs for my deliveries for my work. And somewhere I will make that little trade-off at that point of time. Then there could be other times where you would feel that, it's important that I will find some ways of managing my family environment, but I know that I have to deliver at the highest level of what is expected me from work. And you make that trade-off and balance at the other point of time. So it's not a blanket thing to say that, this is what I need to do, but it is literally living that every moment and living those critical points where you make those trade-offs and you decide what is right for you at that point of time. There is no great formula to say what works for one person has to work for somebody else, right? So to me, that's really one way of looking at it, this whole aspect of work-life balance. The way I go about it is that I look at my priorities, which are important. So family for me is a very big priority in my life. And therefore, I will make sure that while I focus on my work, but my presence for my family is there, So if I need to be there in my hometown every Diwali, it is a must. I have to be there. I cannot, whatever, I will juggle around my work, but I have to spend time with my family. It's a very precious thing for me. I cannot, even if it means flying for a day, I will fly in for a day and come back and come back, Otherwise, I would spend a week with them. But if it means that I'm really crunched, but I have to be there on Diwali day with my family. So you decide what are your plans, and you plan life, my wife is much better than me in planning, but she does a marvelous job of making sure that she's there for her personal priorities. She's there with her friends, and she has to have her celebration, her time with her friends, and then she's there as a professional delivering whatever is required. So I think it's just a question of priorities. There's no magic wand or a magic bullet which will tell you that this is the right formula. I think every individual decides based on their own priorities and their plans. But I would say that, it's just a cliche. There's a little story that you may have read about those. I think it's attributed to Coca-Cola or I don't know, even Sundar Pichai, somebody says, but the thing about that work is like a glass, like a rubber ball, right? And you throw it and it bounces back. But the other important aspects of your life, which is family, health, relationships, friends, your spiritual self, your soul, those are like glass balls. And you break them once, they're either going to be shattered or they're going to be damaged in some manner. But the work will bounce back. You will find a way to find a way to connect back to work. Perhaps there lies the answer to saying, where do you decide? You're living it's that the whole wheel of life, and there's so many aspects to your life. You have to live a full life.
True. And I think having said that, we live in such a time which is, so heavily influenced by technology and AI, like we were discussing.
Yeah.
And even though most of us, like in today's conversation, we all come from a time where there was practically just 10% technology or no technology, to now where almost I won't even say almost, like every aspect of our life is in some way or the other influenced by, technology or AI. So if I could ask you, what is the one piece of advice that you would like to give to the young professionals who are literally stepping into a future that is an AI enabled future? Because they haven't seen a time where there was, no Instagram, no LinkedIn, no Alexa, no Siri. Now they have everything, which is AI.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
what would your advice to them be?
Yeah, I think it's an exciting time, isn't it? Uh, and sometimes a little intimidating as well, right? Sometimes you say, "Thank God, I'm not part of this," and like that's my view. Sometimes you say it's so overwhelming at sometimes, and then you say so exciting as well.
Yeah.
And today there was something that was happening, and I was. It was my uncle's flat, and there was something that happened there, and there were tenants that were staying in that house, and somebody from the Tata Power called up to say that, look, we are going to cut off the electricity because the tenants have not paid for the last 2 months and blah blah. And I was like fretting, saying, what do I do? And the tenant actually is abroad. And so I called up the broker who had actually done the deal for that flat, and I asked him that, look, this guy is Tata Power saying that he's going to cut off the electricity, and within 5 minutes he came back. The broker said, don't worry, the online, I've made the payments all done. And I was just thinking, in the earlier days, you would say, my God, we're running with the bill, making that payment, making sure that they don't cut the electricity. It used to be a harrowing experience, right?
Absolutely.
The possibility of somebody cutting off your electricity would be like really terrible. Yeah. Within 5 minutes, the problem got solved because I sent a mail to this guy in the UK, the gentleman, the tenant. He wrote a mail to the broker. The broker immediately paid up, and within exactly, I would say, less than 10 minutes, the problem was sorted out. And that's just a small example of how exciting and how things are just becoming so fast and agile. And I'll tell you also another interesting story that happened, just to probably answer that question in a slightly roundabout manner. I was attending a conference in 2019 end, and it was about very aspect of technology in coaching. And it was a coaching conclave, Asia Pac coaching conclave. And there was a whole section of how the role of technology would impact coaching. And I remember one celebrated speaker, he put up a slide saying the robos are coming. And that was like a very provocative headline to that talk, and the robos are coming. And guess what? He spoke about how today advances are being made, that coaching would actually become technology-led. So you would have robos doing the coaching, and they would, and there are experiments being done to imbue empathy in robos. So guess now human beings are working to make robots empathetic.
Our careers are at stake.
I was blown by that presentation, and it seemed like I was reading about it, and I actually wrote a post on it 2 years back on that, about artificial empathy. And I said, look, we are actually talking about something that seems quite bizarre at one level to say artificial empathy, but that was the kind of conversation that was happening. Now, that makes you think that with this rapid advances of technology and AI and machine learning, are humans becoming more robotic, or robots are becoming more human? And that's almost like a choice that we have today, right? Do we use technology to increase the computing power and use the prowess and make robots to do our job, or really go deep down into ourselves and find out what makes us more human and use that as our strength and as our leverage? So that's the interesting part about making that choice, right? And as the world embraces technology, and we are going to really be seeing more and more. I mean, Facebook has announced a whole new strategic approach they're going to take for the brand, right? A lot is just going to be happening around the corner, and that's now a lot of leaders, and that's where coaching, and that's where things like Strong Human Network starts coming into play. It's almost like a counterforce, right? Working. That just so that we don't get blown away by one end of it, there is almost an equal and opposing reaction happening to say, are we losing ourselves in the process as human beings, right? And that's what we are really. At the end of the day, that's what that's what our strength is. That's what strong human is. So somewhere, instead of talking too much about artificial empathy, let's start being empathetic to start with in our day-to-day, in our leadership today, and then worry about creating artificial empathy in robots, right? So it's an interesting thing that I thought I should just bring up into this discussion.
It's so funny, now we all wear smart watches, and even when you speak about empathy, so I did not, if I don't work out for a day, the smartwatch will remind you, are you okay? Did you work out today? So empathy is already there in the AI. So yeah, and
Alexa also wishes good night. Once I'm locking my office, Alexa says good night to me.
And even yesterday, Alexa will be like, do you want to know your health tip for today?
or on LinkedIn, that you get your regular alerts that, a reminder for what have you learned, what is the new thing that you want to learn today. And in fact, I think that's the important point. If you said in terms of advice, I would say one aspect that I think is going to be really, really strong along with this whole advent of technology is about that what Adam Grant talks about in his new book about Think Again. It's about learning and unlearning and relearning. And that is going to be one of the biggest challenges that we have today. And I know for a fact that some people are approaching me through LinkedIn again. And a lot of times they come and say that we want to invest in ourselves, in our own learning. And I remember in the earlier days when I was in the corporate life, I used to say, but the company has to send us to a training program. The company has to do this for us. And the company has to take us to some Goa and to do some fancy. Today, everyone and leaders, and especially leaders at the senior and middle level, are saying that, look, I need to make sure that I'm relevant. I'm going to be relevant in 2 years' time, right? And what do I need to do to invest in myself? And this kind of curiosity, this kind of learning, and there are so many avenues available today. I saw a new ad the other day. I don't remember whether it was, which company was it, from one of the edtech majors, and they were taking tuitions head on. They said, they literally for the first time, they said, tuition, now the best tuition that you can add. Now it's almost like saying there's a huge market for tuitions, and it can we actually look at that as competition. So learning and on your own, self-learning, it's literally what they're calling is like, it's the meta skill that for the 21st century. And self-awareness, this whole bit of self-awareness per se, a lot of people are saying if we are not going to do enough about it ourselves, then we are in real trouble. Waiting for somebody to do that for you is not going to happen. Unfortunately, our education system is not really geared up to do much of that. So we have to look outside, but luckily things are available today. Resources are available. There are organizations like Strong Human Network that are also working to build awareness around self-awareness. Sure. It's meta to say that, but yeah, that's also what is happening. So I think that's another area that is going to become hugely important going forward.
So Rajesh, you mentioned about an interesting thing about robots going into the empathy, all those things, right? Now, one interesting aspect I have seen is that business. So can robots do business by themselves? Because at the end, business decisions are made by humans, right? Everywhere.
Right.
So I think business and commerce, that is what. And AI is again interrelated with the business, right? It can't exist on its own. There is a business use case, and that is where I think if you are a seller or a someone who is offering a product or something, I think a human role is that, and that is becoming more and more important,
right?
Isn't it? So that's one more thing, and I would like to add one more point which you mentioned in the earlier stage, but I think which is very, very relevant, is about communication. Communication being connected with leadership.
Right.
A lot of people just focus on communication. So when you are talking about communication, if there is no intent, communication can be done for anything. It depends upon what is the objective of the communication, right?
Right.
And it is the leadership which actually decides the intent of the communication.
Right.
And that is what more important, I feel. And you have rightly emphasized on that. So communication without leadership, I think it doesn't make sense. Even now in a company like SHN, we are virtually distributed team. So communication is very effective because everyone is leading. Everyone in their position, they are leading. First of all, they are leading a strong human lifestyle, which helps them in leading other people very easily. And I think that is the success of our organization in effective communication. What would you say, Niharika?
Definitely, Sainath. I totally agree with you. So as Sir was also mentioning, like, now these kind of communities are going to be more in demand. So that's absolutely very well said, sir. Very, very truly said.
And also just to build on what Sainath was saying, especially in crisis situations, and we talk about communication when things are okay, normal. But when, especially in the last few years, we have realized the power of leadership communication when the chips are down, and when there's tremendous amount of stress and strain. And we've all seen some of the leaders have really stood up and inspired and galvanized. And there's so many examples of speeches were going viral about some leaders, the way they handled this crisis and pandemic. So again, imagine if leaders were not communicating. And there were examples where people did not do enough of communication. You can create a situation where people are completely unsure of what to do and where to go.
Yeah.
But it's powerful leadership with a very strong communication backing to make sure that people are feeling that sense of equanimity around them, even when they notice that things are chaotic all around. So I think critical.
Yeah. So, sir, one more point which you mentioned is about education sector getting transformed. So you mentioned that if you take a subject, so to tutoring, which you mentioned that AI is coming in competition to tutoring.
Yes.
And one more thing, if you see in our ecosystem itself, like for suppose Byju's, White Hat Junior, there is a lot of things happening in this industry. So for suppose Byju's has acquired Akash IIT. Okay.
Yes.
And if you see Byju's, he himself is a teacher, and he was actually teaching during my time.
He started his life as a teacher.
Yeah. And now you see, for suppose in India, let's say the best maths teacher or best physics teacher, probably Byju's will be there in that top segment. And due to this, what happens is that there are only few players who actually who have the credibility and who are actually valued in market. So at the end, for 100 crore plus population of India, there are going to be 5, 10, 15, 20 maximum maths teachers who will be the best. Or in simple, you say, if you are in the first page of Google or some other app where the best teachers are there, then you are there. If you are in the second page, it doesn't matter because everyone is going to focus on these 10 people. And now these 10 people, do they need this other 100 people who are actually doing the same job like this?
Yeah.
So that is leading to the disruption of the industry.
Right.
So for suppose Byju's needs salespeople who can actually go and pitch their product to parents and make a sale. He doesn't need more maths teachers or physics teachers.
Yeah.
Right. And I think this whole system, due to its natural evolution, because everyone is going to do what suits them the best, right?
Yeah.
And that is what is about SHN also. Strong human network, the most important value add we bring in anyone's life is that we help you understand the universe, how it is. Everyone is trying to be strong, whether it is animal or human being also at different levels. Everyone is trying to be strong. Even the senior management, founder, government, everyone is trying to be strong. Now, if you start thinking from this angle, you will be able to understand the world better.
True.
Right? And that is how you will also be able to see how business is evolving.
Yeah.
And business is not in isolation again. Business is related with politics, everything. If you see, in China has brought down a lot of education companies with one stroke.
Yeah.
Right? And they are also saying online gaming just 3 hours per week. After that, stop.
Yeah.
Mr. Xi Jinping has said that gaming and all these things are helping people, Chinese people become CC males. So that is why he said no gaming after so many hours. So these things are happening. And I think America is going to react differently to this. India is going to react differently. And I think this is the time of evolution. Like as you said, everyone is forced to think for themselves. So when people are forced to think for themselves, they behave in a certain way. And I think this will lead to much better society also, because technology is going to be huge differentiator. There was never a period when there was this kind of technology available. If you see, last time it was around World War I or World War II. Then also the technology was still at a preliminary stages. Now we have seen all those things, and now we are in the digital AI kind of stage. So it's, I mean, very exciting, the conversation which we are having now. See, Madhu is in Mumbai, you are also in Mumbai, Niharika is in Hyderabad, I'm in Bangalore, and our audience are in 10 different locations, and we are doing this almost for zero cost, you can say. Right? This was never possible. If we had to, just 5 years go, if you go back, only a TV studio with a big investment could do something like this. And there were only few TV media channels, and everything used to revolve around that. But now everyone who has a good content, this is like the best time to be a content creator. The content creator will help you in creating personal brands. For suppose I follow a person called Khan Sir General Studies. Okay, he teaches in some Kanpur somewhere. He teaches general studies, but he's so interactive that a person like me sitting in Bangalore, he's watching his videos. Right. So this is how I think it's evolving, and very, very interesting time to be here. To be honest.
Absolutely.
Over to you, Madhu.
And, we were talking a lot on communication and leadership, and we have a question actually from Jhumar Matrani for you, sir. What are your favorite books on communication and leadership?
But yeah, good to hear from Jhumar. I think she's a fantastic trainer. From all the stuff that she posts on LinkedIn, I can make out that she must be really doing a fantastic job with her audience. On communication, there's so many books, right? I mean, I've just bought a book from a lady called Kate Murphy on listening. Listening is an area that I'm quite fascinated with, so I want to do more work on that. But I've just bought a book on listening that I'm going through. Then there's this whole aspect of difficult conversations, right? Crucial conversations. That's another one. That's another area of interest for me. But of course, any books from John Maxwell on leadership and communication. There's a book called Leadership, which I'm also reading right now. Which are the books on communication? I've also bought a book recently, which I've not started yet, on conversational intelligence. So it's an area that probably has not much, it's emotional intelligence is a huge subject, but there's also some work on conversational intelligence that I'm actually reading currently. So yes, there are books I love to read. Then there is all books on TED and secrets, secrets of storytellers. Since I do some sessions on storytelling, there's a book from on storytelling. See the secrets from storytellers. That aspect. So yeah, these are some of the books that come to my mind. I'm sure that if I look around, there's many more. These are the ones that come to my mind immediately.
I'm going to read a lot of those books now. I'm going to make a note of them and go look for those books. At this point, actually, I have a question for you as well, because we've come to an end of our question, but I still have another question. I spoke to you about it before, and I think even Niharika might have a similar question, because we both come from a very similar background. We come from the same school of thought. I read one of your articles about unraveling executive presence and the what and how of it. And you've spoken in that about, how there's research which is making the concept of executive presence more tangible. So today, when most people are working remotely or working from home and not really going out there physically, how crucial would you say is executive presence, and how can an individual improve or ensure that their presence is felt?
Yeah, I think it's a good one, Madhumita, this question. And it's obviously in a virtual medium, there are challenges, for establishing your executive presence, especially when, you are a lot of times you are all, camera off, camera on, and sometimes people don't have the kind of sort of, the right environment around. Rather than I would say executive presence has got three aspects to it. One is really your gravitas, is it you as a person, then and then what you bring in, that kind of credibility and ethos as a person that you have. The other aspect is communication. It's very critical, right? And the third thing is appearance. So all the three things constitute what is executive presence. And then there are lots of image styling companies and image stylists who tell you how to even do it in the virtual medium. It's important to communicate a certain sense of gravitas that you carry and how you communicate. So I would say that executive presence in the virtual medium is a little more challenging than what it was, but still very, very critical, because today leaders realize that in a digital first world, and everybody in a video driven world, everybody has to come across in a certain manner and show up in the right way. And you are doing a lot of media interactions, which was not the norm earlier. There's always in your face kind of activity happening. So one has to learn the tricks of the trade to come across and show up as someone who carries the kind of sense of maturity, is well groomed and well poised, and sometimes can not flinch in the event of pressure. Sometimes people crack up, and I think Virat Kohli, for instance, is a fantastic speaker, and I find him that he carries himself very well. But there are times even he is sometimes cracked, and then we had even a Japanese tennis player, Osaka, she also used to come for interviews. And that's also the intense scrutiny under which you are there, and you have to stand up and you have to present your views, and you just come sweating from a match, and you still have to make sense in the way you communicate, because every word, and especially in the Indian context with a following like cricket, every word that you say can be misconstrued. So a lot of that also, therefore, there are specialists who guide you of how to handle the pressure, number one, because EP is also about how you handle pressure and keep that equanimity as a leader. And you're not ruffled in crisis mode. So all that also needs a lot of training to say and what not to say, when to keep your calm, when to reflect a question. So yes, lots of skilling required there. But I think eventually, to answer your question, to sum it up, to me, in all this that you talk about EP, what is required is confidence. Eventually, and confidence from an internal perspective, how confident, secure you are as an individual inside. And that gets manifested externally, right? So as long as one works on the confidence and self-confidence aspect, a lot of executive presence can be handled with some little bit of styling tips from people and some presentation tips that are being given to you. But inherently what is required is confidence.
Absolutely. That actually brings us to the end of the session. Niharika, Mr. Sainath, would you like to say anything?
I think it was a wonderful conversation, and Mr. Rajesh has given us a lot of insight into what actually executive presence is. And also he has mentioned about the connection between leadership and communication, which is very important, which is missing. See, communication is very superficial, but Mr. Rajesh was able to connect that, how communication is connected with leadership. So thanks a lot, Rajesh, for that insightful conversation. Over to you guys.
Yeah. Thanks, Saina. Thanks, Madhumita, for a engaging session. You had lots of questions.
Absolutely. And
I was able to answer to whatever extent I could to the questions, and very thought-provoking questions that you put up.
Absolutely. You answered all the questions that we asked, plus a lot of unanswered questions as well. So, and that itself means a lot to us, and it's an absolute privilege to be hosting you today and to have you as a part of SHN. And thank you so much for enlightening us with your presence. We were just beyond elated to, have hosted you today.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Pleasure is mine. Thanks, Niharika.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. With that, we have come to an end of today's episode. However, we have more episodes coming with strong humans from diverse backgrounds like corporates, leadership gurus, influencers, sports persons, entrepreneurs, and so much more. So just to let you know, to all the viewers, make sure that you stay tuned for our next episode. And it's brought to you by the Strong Human Network, which is an elite club that helps you be the best version of yourself by being more confident, self-aware, and emotionally intelligent. 3 subjects that we speak about in all our episodes, and we spoke about them today as well. So if you wish to lead a strong human lifestyle, or if you believe you are a strong human and can help others lead a strong human lifestyle, then visit our website www.shn.life and request for an invite today. That is our website, and it's just a click away, you guys. And if you know me personally, you can use my referral code Madhumita. And if you know my colleague Niharika personally, you can use her code Niharika. If you don't know either of us, no worries, you can simply request an invite without a referral code too. And one of our relationship managers will get in touch with you. And once they're convinced that you're up for the strong human lifestyle, you'll be offered a membership. And while you're at it, please follow our channel on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, because we share amazing content regularly. And just to let you know, SHN is not a Netflix or an Amazon Prime subscription. Just in case you're wondering, you have to complete the 21-day challenge to qualify for the membership, because at SHN, your success is our responsibility. And with that, it's me, Madhumita, signing off, and we will see you in our next episode. Till then, be the best version of yourself. Be a strong human.
Network.
Bye
We
bye.
keep posting a lot of content which helps a person lead a
so
strong human lifestyle. So if you wish to lead a strong human lifestyle and be the best version of yourself, do subscribe and follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. We'll see you there. Thank you.